Last summer, I was fortunate enough to set speed records upon our own 75-kilometer West Coast Trail, and then 14 days later on the 215-kilometer-long East Coast Trail in Newfoundland. A few months prior, I ran 17:06 for 100 miles at Western States in California, good enough for 6th on the day and the second fastest run by a Canadian ever. I set a course record at Hurt in January, 25,000 feet of elevation change in a time of 20 hours and 12 minutes. By all accounts, it was a dream year. It exceeded even my own expectations I had set for myself just 6 years prior. You see, in 2004, I didn't even know what ultra running was. I couldn't comprehend that people went on 5-hour training runs, let alone longer. And I asked the same questions that people always ask of me when they learn of people running 100 miles in one go. Don't you sleep? And of course, the answer is no, not until 5 minutes after you finish the race. So how did I go from complete ignorance of an entire sport to someone who people actually reference for intelligent feedback? Well, full disclosure, prior to 2004, I had run 3 races before. At 17, I thought I'd sign up for a 10K. And 30 seconds before the gun went off, I learned that it was 10 miles. A girl next to me turned to me and asked me what my 10-mile PR was, to which I responded, "What's a PR? And did you just say miles?" My first half marathon took me longer to complete than the record for the full, but I did look like that. And my second half marathon involved actual training for the very first time of about 15 kilometers per week for 4 straight weeks. My total lifetime running mileage as of January 2004 was less than 100 miles. I wasn't born into an athletic family with a running lineage, and neither my parents nor grandparents have ever owned an actual pair of running shoes. I didn't know who Roger Bannister was until I was in my 30s. Now, in the mid-90s, Eco Challenge debuted on national TV, and like many, it caught my eye. I didn't even own a proper backpack, yet this show somehow touched me at my core. Even though I was in the worst shape of my life, I knew that I eventually wanted to do that one day. So fast forward 7 years along, and I found myself in Central America, traveling between dive destinations on what had been a one-way ticket. I was intending to be on the road for multiple years, working as a dive master and eventual instructor. I had a mishap on a dive, and I nearly blacked out in 80 feet of water. And when I surfaced, I was told blatantly that I would never dive again, because if I did, I could go deaf. Through much soul-searching upon the beaches, while friends continued to play with the fishes, I realized that Eco Challenge Ember had been smoldering for the better part of 8 years. And after feeling like something had been stolen from me in diving, I needed a new direction. I regrouped and returned to Canada, and I immediately got my ears properly tested, only to learn that my ear was 100% healthy. My course had been altered, though. I settled on moving to Whistler, a town I had never resided in, and pursuing adventure racing, a sport I had zero experience in. I had kayaked 3 times in my life, and I owned a $200 mountain bike. I really didn't know where to begin. I arrived in January, and in March, I participated in my first ever trail run. I met some really kind, exceptionally talented runners, talkers, and liars. And by the end of the day, they had dragged me through 30 kilometers of running when I intended to do just 15. Now keep in mind, this is 50% longer than I've ever run before, so I bonked pretty hard in the process. Now my return drive to Whistler was a mix of deep introspection and spastic flinching limbs. The parting words they left me with were, "We're running 5 hours next weekend if you'd like to join us." To which I simply had no response. I just did not get it. I was, however, coming to terms with what I consider to be the #1 lesson in endurance athletics. The greatest distance ever traveled in any achievement is the one between your ears. I had no business completing 30K that day, but I did it anyways. And I took that knowledge into my first ever ultra, a 67-kilometer run just 4 months later, and I finished 20th, exactly my goal before the gun went off. In 2006, with my team of 4, we completed our first ever expedition-style adventure race at Primal Quest in Utah. We slept 24 hours during the race, but it took us nearly 9 days to get to the finish line. A decade-long dream had been realized. Now, throughout this entire process, running had always been the easiest discipline for me, not to mention the cheapest. And I felt like adventure racing had hardened me for the solo pursuits of ultra running. So in 2008, I turned my energy 100% to the run. And that summer, I completed my first ever 100-mile week of training. And just 3 weeks later, at my first attempt at the 100-mile distance, I won and set a course record up in Squamish. Now, time, I'm already behind. Now, things certainly didn't always go according to plan, but I learned more in defeat than I did in victory, and I have yet to toe the line without learning something further about who I am and why it is I do this. When I started down this path just 7 years ago, I had absolutely no inkling into the fact that I'd actually be any good at it. I had no true insights into the fact that I'd be able to run, let alone for up to a day and a half at a time. What I did have, however, was a deep-rooted belief in the fact that I was somehow meant to do this, that I was going to pursue something challenging like this all along. I was raised in a very supportive family, and their belief in me instilled belief in myself. And I believed in this dream when no one else had any faith in it. In fact, the majority of people who knew me in my 20s still struggle to understand how I got to where I am today. And to be completely honest, sometimes I'm unsure myself. I just put my head down and got to work. Now, what I carried with me at all times, though, were a positive attitude, an ability to convince myself that pain doesn't really hurt, and a true love of the journey, every single step of the way. Now, the easiest thing in the world would have been for me to accept that my past should somehow dictate my future, that I had no business trying to redefine myself as I closed in on 30 years of age, that the first 28 years of my life should directly determine the next 28 years of my life. And I think we all get caught here far too often. Over-rationalizing, over-analyzing, and overthinking. Talking ourselves out of things instead of talking ourselves into things. Your past does not determine your future, and only you truly know what's inside of you. Wayne Gretzky summed it up best, and yes, I'm going to drop a hockey reference right now. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. So don't let anybody tell you what you should or should not be shooting for. Live with passion and pursue your dreams. Thank you.